and welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch, describe, discuss, and review every horror movie on Netflix. Back again, I'm Chris, and I'm here with Steven.
Hi, can't wait to describe this movie with you. That's a new element of the show. I guess we do that. We just don't usually announce it right up top, but I'm down for it.
That's part of the thing. Like, we're not, we don't want to have too much plot synopsis, but part of the premise of the show is we're going deep into the catalog, so our listeners necessarily don't have to. But anyway, there's no Patrick this week. I think he warned you on the last episode that he might not be here. He's got a lot going on in his life. He's moving into a house. He has a house now.
Probably haunted.
Hopefully it's not haunted. Hopefully, I hope it is. I say hopefully not haunted to be a good friend, but let's be honest.
Well, Allison with a Y at least would love it if it was haunted. I feel like that's her dream house.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I want them to tear up the floor and find something horrifying on the subfloor.
Mm-hmm. Getting
anyway,
Ouija Origin of Evil vibes here.
Yes,
they don't have a basement.
A diary of a little Victorian boy that was tortured to death inside the house, and the diary doesn't end when the boy dies.
What would a Victorian boy be doing in Ipswich? We don't need to think about that.
Yeah, house built in 1960. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it's just Steven and us for a two-hander, or heads up Amon as I like to call it. And this week we're watching Eerie. Eerie. It is a movie I picked because we love our horror movies that just have an adjective name.
We love them. We stan them. I mean, I live for them, frankly.
And I want to just kind of pick something that was kind of random that I didn't have a good reason for picking. Something that would take us back to our roots, where we were just watching random bullshit all the time. And this is a movie that comes to us from the Philippines. But before we get into it any further, let's do a little horror catch-up, because we like to talk about things that haven't happened on Netflix. So, Steven, have you been watching or reading or consuming any other horror content? I mean, we get the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is Nope.
Yeah. Well,
did I say Up?
You said Up.
I meant Nope.
Did you revisit the Pixar film Up recently as well?
I did not. They're kind of similar. They got the same visual motif,
You're not wrong, actually. Not entirely.
I think that's where that came from.
Yeah, no, well, maybe we'll save that for last. I don't have a ton. I've been a bad book club leader on the Discord. I was a day late finishing the Danish author Thomas Olde Heuvelt. I don't know how the fuck to pronounce his name. His novel Hex from 2015. We're just kind of beginning the discussion on that on the Amon Discord, which we'll link to in the show notes. But I thought this book was a slow burn that turns into a fucking blast in the last 100 pages. I've mentioned this on the show before, but this is a story about a small New England town. I mean, this is for the translation from the original Danish novel, where it's kind of outsiders, so-called outsiders, can participate, and buy homes in this town of Black Spring, but they have this organization called Hex set up to keep the outsiders and the society at large unaware that there is a centuries-old witch, Catherine Van Weiler, who roams the town. And
is she a hot witch like Kristen Ritter?
Oh, no. In fact, there's much to be made of this witch's breasts at several points in the novel. I'll just say that. But no,
she's not hot. She's described physically as to repulse the reader.
Yes, very much so.
Interesting.
And yeah, there's a lot of kind of politically incorrect stuff in here that I got very heavy Stephen King vibes. And you never know with Stephen King.
You had very heavy Bill Maher vibes.
Well, that too, maybe. It's kind of, this is actually a good way to describe the novel. It does feel like vintage Stephen King in the sense that it's very well crafted and well thought out, and it's kind of confined to a small New England town, that Stephen King trucks and that sort of thing. But you don't know if the political commentary and the social commentary is coming from the characters and is supposed to make you cringe, or if it's the author kind of supplanting them with his own views. Not quite sure, but anyway,
that's the thing. There's a quotation or some sort of philosophy about that, about how certain things such as conservatism and religion, especially in America, like have gone so far that it's impossible to tell if you're being sincere or being a parody.
Mm-hmm.
Or something.
Yeah,
Things are kind of impossible to satirize at a certain point.
Well, especially when something is translated from another language and you can't really tell if the clumsiness of the writing is due to the translation or if that is actually an accurate reflection of the original text. I do know the ending was changed, according to some folks on our Discord. I haven't read the details on that yet. I'm doing a bad job of describing this book, but basically, you can probably figure it out. The witch is dangerous. There's a reason that people have been trying to keep her under wraps, so to speak, for hundreds of years. And a bunch of meddling kids with a GoPro and bad attitudes kind of get her to break out of her shell and start to participate more actively in the goings-on in the town. And this leads to an almost kind of apocalyptic nightmare for the townsfolk. So I would highly recommend reading Hex, if any of that sounds interesting to you, and stick with it. You know, don't be like me and put it away for 2 weeks because you get bored. If you keep going, it's very rewarding in the end. Chris, after that long ramble, have you watched or read or seen anything other than Nope?
I've watched a lot of stuff.
Oh, hell yeah.
Very uncharacteristic for me. I watched All About Evil on Shudder, the lost film, I suppose. It was made like 10 years ago or something, and it stars Natasha Lyonne.
Hey.
And I had very little interest in this based on the trailer, but I watched it and it was a delight, and I thought it was so funny. I laughed my ass off. And I wanted to save it for this episode, but I think I texted you and Patrick right away and said, you gotta watch All About Evil. I give it almost my highest recommendation if you have a sick sense of humor.
And I do. I mean, I like John Waters. I like Todd Solondz. We've been chatting about it, and it sounds like maybe my new favorite film that I'd never heard of before.
Maybe. I don't want to oversell it, but it was an absolute delight. I also watched Censor on... Where did I watch that? Hulu. I think it's on Hulu right now. Censor, which we've talked about on the show before. I hadn't seen it. I was really into it for a while. The ending, though, it didn't connect with me. And
Same.
Maybe I'm stupid. I don't know. Like I feel like I have a keen eye for themes in movies, but I'm much more attuned to sort of like social and political commentary themes versus emotional themes, which I think Censor traffics in a bit more.
Certainly from what I remember, yeah.
So I didn't quite pick up what it was putting down. I'm still kind of kicking it around my head, but very well made. Not really for me. I also watched Off-Season on Shudder.
That sounds familiar.
Let me tell you, Off-Season on Shudder. It stars Jocelyn Donahue, our friend from House of the Devil, and that movie about sleep paralysis we watched for the show.
Friend of the show, Jocelyn Donahue.
Friend of the show. And the trailer for this movie is phenomenal. I watched this trailer, and both me and the person I was watching the trailer with, we were like, we have to watch that like tonight or tomorrow. That looks so good. And then it was terrible. And I think I figured out Shudder's business model. I think they go to festivals and they buy like the third-rate movies that don't really have a lot of bids on them.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think that's just a fact.
But that's a fact. But they specifically buy them when they're like, oh, we can cut a good trailer for this.
Mm-hmm. And they always do. They always look fucking amazing. They
always do. And I fall for it every time. I see a Shudder trailer and I'm like, I have to watch this tomorrow. And then I watch it and it's just a non-starter. Really disappointed in Off-Season. Watch the trailer on Shudder and then imagine the movie, because it's going to be better than what you get if you actually watch it.
Back in the just to interject about the Shudder thing briefly, like back in the day when I was actively subscribed to the new Fangoria, Sam Zimmerman, who is the head of like content curation or whatever the fuck he's the guy who purchases movies for Shudder. He would run a quarterly column talking about what he'd seen at festivals that he had purchased, and he would write these fantastic articles to get you excited for when these movies would eventually come out. And I've heard interviews with him too, he seems like a really smart guy. He's a true horror fan, and he's always looking for things that are outside the box that we haven't seen before. I think maybe the fault doesn't lie with him so much as it does with what's available at these festivals for what Shudder can afford.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I do feel like at the very least, he's helping keep like a young diverse group of independent filmmakers working, even if their films don't quite work.
Yeah, and also like my standard for a Shudder movie isn't really that high. Like it's I have the subscription. They put out a lot of stuff like a movie a week, and if they're like mediocre, I can usually enjoy them. But this one was just bad, so
Well, I
can't
won't be
recommend
checking
it.
out Off Season.
But Jocelyn Donahue, after a performance in House of the Devil where she just kind of walks around, and then we saw her in the sleep paralysis movie and what Dead Awake or something like that.
I think so.
I don't know. Yeah, and I think we panned her acting ability in that movie. She did not come across well in that movie. She came across really well in Off Season. She had some good acting moments. I was like, oh, she can act. Great.
It's always nice to see an actor who can act, Yeah.
Yeah.
So rare.
Yeah. Or, a actor who's talented, get something to sink their teeth into finally. But yeah, that's it. Other than Nope. And I mean, I know we could do literally a 5-hour podcast on Nope.
I mean, I don't know that I could. I feel, well, then again, I guess I have to check myself. I know myself.
If not only because we've already talked about it for 5 hours.
It's true. What is there to say? I mean, I feel like there's still quite a few people out there from the pulse that I'm finding online who are unsure about whether or not they should see Nope. And I mean, at one level, I don't blame them. I think a lot of film goers are very skeptical about going back into a theater to see anything after everything that we've been through. So I think I would like to briefly review this movie for our fans, just in the sense of like, I think you should see it, but should you see it in a theater? Is that going to be a rewarding experience? How would you?
I say yes.
I say yes as well, even as somebody who didn't really end up liking the movie all that much. I think if you're going to see it, like that's the way it was shot. That's how it's intended to be seen. I do think there's some amazing visuals and suspense sequences in it that really benefit from the screen overwhelming you, and the sound as well.
Yeah, and we saw it in IMAX.
Yeah.
And I thought it made good use of the format. You see lots of sky, lots of desert.
And lots
I'm
of
an IMAX believer now.
I am too. And there's lots of I want to see it on like an actual IMAX screen and not the tiny Limax that we have here in Ypsilanti, Michigan, which was still great. But yeah, it's a gorgeous movie. It's a movie that is very taut at times and very tense at times. It induced me with a sense of wonder in the way that cosmic horror does when it works well for me. But I think there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. It's a movie that I think was edited well for what it was intending to do in some senses, but also it seems like there was a lot of character stuff that was left on the cutting room floor from what I'm reading that might have made everything tie together nicely. So I would have actually felt some sense of catharsis by the end. Which, spoilers, I did not. I was frankly kind of happy it was over. And so abruptly.
I thought it was a great movie. I would recommend it with the caveat that I don't think it was really nearly as successful of a movie as Get Out or Us. I've had a lot of fun thinking about it afterwards. It's become a better movie in my mind the more time I've had to think about what it was trying to say and all the symbolism and the themes. And very, very interesting movie. Very, very well made movie. Just for me on this one, the balance of like how thematically resonant it was versus how entertaining it was a bit off. And I'm not really looking forward to seeing it again, even though it will probably be a much better movie whenever I see it again, kind of knowing what to expect and having knowing what the themes are and not having to try to figure all that out along the way. So
I'll add to that just really quickly. I did see it a second time. I think I texted you about that. And I was hoping that, okay, I've got the baggage out of the way. I know how it's paced, which is a little bit unconventional in some places, how it's structured. I have a good grounding on like what thematic elements of it work for me. And I can, maybe pay more attention to those details and tease more out the second time. I got almost nothing out of the second viewing. I was actually quite bored. Because I think there's a lot going on beneath the surface, but I think a lot of it is in the edit. And I think there's a lot of stuff that is left vague in the final film that is more explicit in the screenplay. And like, there are things that are mysterious that don't need to be. And the fact that they're mysterious doesn't serve the greater themes of the film. It's a classic puzzle box, I guess.
Because the other two movies, and I guess it's impossible not to compare this to Get Out and to Us.
Sure.
They're very accessible and they're very smart movies, but they're also, if you're a dumb person, you're going to have a great time. And maybe you'll only pick up on the message, you know, as superficial level. This movie, like, unless you're looking for the themes, it's hard for me to see you really being entertained by it.
Yeah, I'll second that.
A lot of standing in the desert, moping in the desert, looking at the desert.
Well, and a lot of, like, I mean, this, like,
overlong action sequences that don't have any real,
that oftentimes are, like, hard to like, it's hard to tell where things are spatially during some of the sequences. Like, it's a clumsy edit of, I think, what might actually be a truly great American film. But
well,
more on that some other time.
Release the Snyder cut.
Well, we got the director's cut, at least the cut that Universal Studios thought was, or Universal thought was, like, fit for public consumption. So the editor says there is much more to be seen, and that if we ask for it, we'll see it. I give it a view. It though.
Hashtag release the Snyder cut. Bring it back. Also, The Nightingale is on Netflix now. This is Jennifer Kent's follow-up to The Babadook. I think I've talked about it before. Definitely not a movie for everybody. If you need to look up content warnings, no, you don't, because yes, that's the answer. It's full of upsetting content, extreme upsetting content. But if you can stomach that, it is, I think, a very, very beautiful movie that, in addition to all the horror and trauma, has a lot of humor and beauty in it. And I thought it was a very good and moving movie. So if you've been looking to check it out or you've been thinking about it, you got a chance. It's on Netflix. I would never tell anyone they had to watch it, but I give it my highest recommendation. All right, well, let's talk about Eerie. Let's talk about something important. This is a fairly recent film. What's the year on this one?
2019.
It's a Filipino film set in 1995, though. For what reason?
I don't know about that, but
I don't know for what reason. My first thought was maybe this is, actually, I haven't done any research on this one. My thought is maybe it was based on a book that took place in 95. They wanted to be faithful to it or something. Or maybe it was an easy way for them to write out modern technology.
That's always my suspicion with these things, and I think you're on the nose there.
Yeah. So it is about, and I think we read the plot synopsis on the last episode, but I forgot it. So
me too.
It starts off with it's a Catholic girls' boarding school in the Philippines, and, you know, girls are telling ghost stories, and there's a bathroom stall that's haunted because a girl hanged herself in that stall years ago, and now her vengeful ghost lurks in the bathroom stall. And don't go in the bathroom alone or you get got. And, you know,
classic Bloody Mary sort of thing.
We open with a little prologue where there's these little girls, and one of them goes into the bathroom and gets got. And I was like, all right, so that's the premise of the movie. We've seen this a million times. There's gonna be, you know, a ghost. It's going to be spooky, boarding school, Bloody Mary, what have you. But the actual premise of the movie, which reveals itself a little bit is we're actually going to follow the school psychologist / guidance counselor, who is, like, not really a nun, but close enough. She doesn't live at the school, but, you know, she doesn't wear the habit of the nuns, but she is, you know, still definitely in the fold, obviously. And she is gonna try to solve this mystery because she's exploring the circumstances of this girl who got and what happened to her. I guess she went crazy. She got and went crazy and is, like, in an asylum somewhere, right?
Wait, okay, which girl? There are several
the
girls.
First victim. So not the ghost girl, but the first one who goes in and sees the ghost in the prologue, and then we don't see her for the rest of the movie. I think they say that she's nonverbal, like in an asylum now or something.
Yeah, I think she tried to commit suicide, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. We don't really see her do any of that, but yeah, she's off. Anyway, so this guidance counselor is like troubled by that, also troubled by the stresses of other girls in the school, in the class. But the kicker is this school psychologist can see the ghost. Eri, short for Erica, which
long for Eerie.
Long for Eerie.
That makes no sense, but
well, no, I mean, I think definitely that's why the movie's called Eerie.
I mean, I entertained that thought.
No, it is, and I don't know, I don't know what dialect there's of language they're speaking in this movie in the Philippines.
Tagalog, I think, but I don't know anything about the intricacies of that.
There's like 1,000 languages in the Philippines and different dialects and stuff. That's a safe bet, but it's. I suspected that like Eri, short for Erica, is actually how you would say or pronounce Eerie. You know?
Maybe. So I mean, again, I had the same thought.
Words, maybe. I don't know, but it's definitely Eerie, Eri. They're meant to kind of rhyme. Eri is the ghost. Eri has been dead for a while. Our school guidance counselor can see Eri and isn't that afraid of her. She's a little afraid of her, but mostly she's trying to help her.
Trying to understand her.
What happened to her, understand her, and then use that knowledge to help the other girls in the school and help them because they're all scared of, or, you know, they're all having their own struggles that are being exacerbated by this ghost legend, etc.
Well, and also exacerbated by the absolutely horrifically abusive and intimidating head nun at this school.
Yes, it's not a happy environment on the best of days, much less when you have a ghost.
And when somebody dies or somebody's injured, you get like a day to recover, and then it's back to business as usual because, like the priest, the male like priest at the school as well, like basically says like, well, this happens all the time. It should be routine. You should be able to get over it. It's happened
before. Like they have experience with this from when Eri was killed, you know, all those years ago under dubious circumstances. And so this premise really drew me in because it exceeded my expectations. I don't think I've seen anything like this before, except for like The Sixth Sense, which I'm not sure counts. Hey, can you think of a movie like this where there's like this kind of dynamic between a human protagonist and the scary ghost?
You know, I can't. And one thing that I did like about this movie was that the setting and everything about this is like so not my bag, but I found that did feel really novel as I was watching it.
Yeah, exactly. It was the saving grace of this movie for me because the rest of it was very, like you said, not very engaging or, you know,
pretty maudlin for the most part, I think.
Maudlin and fairly generic. You know, we've seen a lot of movies with boarding schools and walking around in the dark or boarding schools or any sort of institution where you sleep at night, you know, hospital, etc. Nails comes to mind.
I was trying to think of the title. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know, Eli, Eerie, that kind of rhymes. Maybe it's a remake. Anyway.
I remember nothing about Eli. Oh my God.
So yeah, like I really like that. You know, like we see the ghost girl in her office, and like there's not even a moment that we're shown where like the guidance counselor's like, what's going on? Like we get the sense that she has a pre-existing relationship with this ghost to the extent that like, you know, she drops her pen, she looks under the desk and she sees ghost feet sitting in the chair opposite her desk, and like we're pretty scared as the audience, but she's not scared. She's like, oh, hi, Eri, what's up? What can I do for you?
Yeah. Turns on the tape recorder, starts interviewing.
Yeah, really, really kind of fresh stuff. And that's basically the premise of the movie. The main conflict, I guess, begins when another girl encounters Eri and does die. It looks like a suicide at first, but I guess she's actually murdered and like thrown off a building or something. And the prime suspect in the murder is the groundskeeper of the school, who we've met before, and we feel like he's a nice guy, and our hero and people close to him were like, no way did he do this murder. But he's like about to go to the electric chair for killing this girl. Justice happens swiftly in the Philippines. And
apparently, yeah, he's immediately scapegoated, and it's on the news, and the parents of the girl are sobbing and, calling for everyone to condemn him. And we just don't believe that he could possibly have done this. He seems like such a nice, kindly, quiet man.
Or he might not seem like a kind man, but we know that there are several other phenomenon in this school that could kill somebody. So
yeah.
We're rooting for our protagonist to solve the mystery. So that's basically what it is. It's because now she's on a clock to try to save the life of her groundskeeper friend. So now she really wants to figure out what is going on. And so that, I guess, her investigation largely consists of her sneaking back to the school to try to talk to Eri at night in various rooms, etc., and just figure out what the hell is going on with Eri.
Right. And I mean, you say sneaking back, like she's put on leave at one point for
they take her badge, right? And they take her badge and her crucifix, and
she doesn't have a badge. I don't think, is it ever even hinted that she's religious? Like, I feel like she's just a child psychiatrist who happens to work within a religious institution. There's something to be, there's something made of later in the film about how, without spoilers, how like in the past you had to also be a nun to be the school psychologist, but that they changed that rule over time.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's not really explored either way. Her being not religious doesn't seem to be a factor, at least in the text, maybe subtextually.
Yeah, I only mentioned it because I didn't pull anything out of that, but you, the master of themes, I was wondering if maybe that would tie into any larger, broader thoughts you had about this. I don't think so either.
I'm kind of at a thematic loss on this one, actually, which is one of my frustrations about it, because like there's some very clear stuff about the death penalty in this movie. Like that she's listening to a news report, not even about the groundskeeper, but like some other murderer who is going to get the death penalty. And like there's a very like, you get the sense that outside the walls of the school, there's a very crime and punishment sort of atmosphere, or tough on crime atmosphere. Inside the walls of the school, the nuns certainly represent strict discipline and paddling girls and, making sure you're not staying up too late, etc. But then our hero, the psychologist, is sort of the, restorative justice type, where she's like, no, I'm not gonna give up on anybody. Let's come to an understanding. Let's figure out what's going on and how we can solve the situation. And she literally stops
an instance of a corporal punishment in its tracks. And I think that was why she was put on leave. Finally.
Yes. So I was latching on to that, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. We'll talk about it later. I didn't think that in the end the movie vindicated her.
No.
I
not
think,
from my read anyway.
If anything, this might be a movie that says, all right, this is our way: crime, punishment, discipline, death penalty. Oh, here's a woman who wants to change that. Look at how this goes for her. And like, this might be a pro death penalty movie.
I mean, that's a hilarious thing to say, but rolling back again, I'm still digesting this thing. I just finished it, an hour and a half ago, but you might be onto something.
It might not even be a deliberately pro.
I don't think so.
They might be trying to make an anti-death penalty movie, but aren't very conscious of the signifiers.
I think the intentions are well-meaning, but they are executed in a pretty fucked up way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to when I think the Philippines and I think the death penalty, I think of Duterte, the president of the Philippines, who was elected in summer 2016. And much like Trump was like, I'm one of the most powerful men in the world now. I'm going to use that power just to kill people, just to murder, just to have death penalties.
Wow, I don't know anything about that, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, Duterte is like the Trump of the
I know
Philippines.
the name, but Yeah.
And then, yeah, he was like, oh, yeah, we're going to just start, giving the death penalty to people. So that was 2016. This movie comes out in, 2019? I feel like maybe it's a political thing. I don't know.
There was a lot that exceeded my grasp just on a cultural level, I have to say. And I don't know that if I was more aware of what's going on politically in the Philippines, there's probably more to dig into. You don't, in my mind, I mean, some filmmakers do it, but you don't bring up themes like this without having something to say about it, or you don't bring up ideas like this without having some kind of, at least trying to make a cogent statement about how you feel about it as a filmmaker.
You would hope not, anyway.
You would hope not, and this felt like a very assuredly written and directed film. So I don't know. I kind of gave some of it the benefit of the doubt and assumed that there were things that I just wouldn't understand without doing more reading.
Somewhere in the Philippines, they're watching Joker and they're saying the same thing. They're saying, this looks like a very well-made film. I'm sure they wouldn't bring up all these issues if they weren't saying something very deliberate about it.
Yep. Not just the Philippines.
Anyway. So yeah, I mean, other than that, it's a pretty generic movie. I don't even know what else there is to talk about. Stylistically, there's not a whole lot to talk about.
It's very I'm sure you notice this as well. The cinematography in this movie, the color is drained out of absolutely everything in a very seemingly deliberate way. Maybe just to give it a look, but I honestly found that a little bit off-putting. There were stretches of this movie where I struggled to really pay attention because there just didn't seem to be very much life on the screen. And that, I think, that element contributed to it once I keyed into it.
Yeah, it's all very gray, very drab, dark.
Very drab. People's, everyone's face is gray looking. The skin tones are very odd. The way that the color correction was done on this, color grading.
Yeah. Which I can see how that would make sense as a creative choice, but yeah, it doesn't make for a great viewing experience.
And there's no contrast when we're in other settings outside of the school either. I thought maybe that's tying in here somewhere, but it's just all of it looks like that. Everybody looks like a ghost.
There are a lot of mirrors and reflections, and I think they're used to set up jump scares once or twice. But for the most part, they're there, I think, to threaten a jump scare and then get you with the jump scare from somewhere else. But there's a lot of
this
stuff.
Is jump scares up the wazoo in this movie.
But
some of them were kind of cool.
Don't really land,
There's one that I liked.
Okay. But yeah, I thought about this a lot because it's a couple of them just got me because they'll get you. But so many of them just would happen and I would have no response. And I always think about what Lee Winnell tweeted once where he's like, people think jump scares are cheap, but they're actually really hard to do. And Lee Winnell said there's only about 20 good jump scares in the history of cinema.
I'd love to see that list.
And probably 10 of them are in Lee Winnell movies.
Well, no doubt.
But yeah, just kind of a trap. I don't know. Well, did you like this movie, Steven?
I didn't dislike it, but I didn't particularly like it. This is classic. I guess I'm just reviewing it now. Let's review it. This is a cue for me. I mean, I think there is some... I keep using the word novel. I don't know why that's stuck in my craw today, but there's some novel aspects to this, plot-wise, character-wise, that I hadn't seen in other films of this ilk that traffic in this kind of setting, the kind of classic, sort of Catholic or boarding school setting that involves a haunting, a ghost of a past trauma. But it did go in directions I didn't fully expect. I just felt like the whole thing... It just felt kind of weightless to me. I was never fully invested in the characters or in the mystery. But it had its moments, for sure. I think some of the performances were great. That the head nun, I forget what her actual title is within the school. I thought she was
Sor Alice.
Yes, and she,
which is Alice Alice.
Yeah. I thought she was terrific. She apparently was in a pivotal Filipino horror movie from the late 70s. I don't remember the title, but I Googled it earlier. It's something I'd never heard of, but apparently it's noteworthy in the Philippines that, like, you know, she is a fairly well-known actress, and I can see why. I thought she was pretty intimidating and also shockingly vulnerable at certain points in the film. I thought it's just an interesting character, very well portrayed. She could have been a classic sort of, you know, the kind of Nurse Ratched stereotype, just the evil to the bone with no remorse. But yeah, I thought she was great. I thought the school psychologist, her performance was interesting. Well, anyway, I guess that's my review. It's a solid cue it. You know, if you like a supernatural thriller-ish that has, you know, that traffics in Catholicism and sort of those signs and signifiers, then check it out. You might dig it. There's a little bit to like in there. What about you, Chris?
So I've actually talked myself into giving this a view it.
Whoa.
And
how do you do that? Teach me.
It's not the best view it. It's not the highest view it. It's practically a cue it, but I have to give it a view it just because of the novel elements. There was enough in here that I hadn't seen before and that I thought was really interesting. And also I thought, although it didn't totally connect in all the right places, this movie had a lot of heart and soul. And yeah. I really liked how much the guidance counselor cared about the kids. There's some real moving stuff, especially towards the end, and I just thought it was a emotionally compelling in those places, if not compelling in the rest of the movie. And I don't know, anytime, like, listen, we're watching all these Netflix horror movies, we know it's going to be rare for us to find like a top tier movie that we've never heard of before in the depths of the Netflix catalog.
Of course.
So what I'm looking for what I'm hoping for when I pull up a random movie with a name like Eerie on Netflix is that it's gonna be like this. It's gonna be something interesting that I never would have watched if I weren't doing this show, that has memorable stuff in it that's distinct from everything else that's out there. And this had enough of that I'm going to say it's worth checking out. Because the rest of it, honestly, not good, but it's competent. The even the slow parts of this movie are not worse than most of the stuff that we watch.
Oh, and when you put it in that perspective, absolutely. I mean, this is a well-made, well-crafted film. Much more so than I was expecting because of the dreck that we're used to. But I found there were also very, very few, if any, of the cliches I was expecting in this either. Mm-hmm. So you've made a very good argument for Review It, Chris. I support that. A
very human film. And, you know, look, because we see a lot of these movies that feel like they're commercial products and that they weren't made by people. I mean, they were, obviously, but this one feels like someone actually put some passion into this and had some feelings about stuff and wanted, and it's scary too in places. Most of it, the jump scares aren't scary. Towards the end, it gets real scary for me.
There's some scary stuff. And it's worth noting, too, when you're talking about expecting this to just be a product. This was apparently the first, and I don't know how many of these there are, but the first Filipino N film.
Wow. Yeah. I thought you were going to say it was the first Filipino film to make over $300 million.
No.
I was going to say, does that mean they're making Eerie too? I mean, see Eerie too.
For all we know. Well, if you're giving it a view it, I would expect that.
All right. Well, we're going to go to the spoiler room and talk a little bit more about the plot and the ending. So if you want to go check out Eerie on your own, now's a good time to take a break and go do that. Otherwise, we're going to spoil everything. But first, let's remind you, in between episodes, you can find us online. We're on social media. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter at EHMONcast, EHMON cast. We have a Discord, which is amazing. We have great conversations with our listeners. We love to hear your thoughts on there or by email.
We love to hear it.
We love to hear it. We love to read it more often than not. But we'll be putting the link to the Discord in the show notes. I think I said that last time and then I forgot. So sorry if I fooled you last time.
And we'll I hope that we'll start kind of including that in any of our social media output from here on out, because I think Discord is, if you're a true fan of the show, I think that's really the place to be. I mean, we're accessible. The other fans that you'll meet are pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah. It's
good place to lose a couple hours.
It's good vibes. Yeah. You just hang out there. Yeah. And you can go to our website, everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com. You can poke around there, see what links work, see what's broken. Go to our merch store, order a t-shirt that says Every Horror Movie on Netflix on it. Wear it when you pick your daughter up from her Catholic boarding school. You know, lots of options. But yep, there's plenty of ways to connect with the show in between episodes, and we hope you take advantage of them. And don't forget, please, I'm begging, if you haven't already, go onto your podcast provider, rate the show 5 stars, and leave a little review.
Even if you hate it.
No.
Just give us 5 stars.
5 stars.
Just give us 5 stars.
It helps other people find the show. All right, with that said, we're going to go to the spoiler room for real now. So we'll be back in just a few seconds, ready to spoil everything about Eerie. We are down here in the spoiler stall, getting ready to spoil everything about Eerie.
Yeah, keeping in the tradition of haunted toilets in Amon history.
Hopefully we don't get 400 rabid comments trying to give us the death penalty for talking about the haunted toilet this time.
Is it only 400? I feel like it's been a minute since I've seen those notifications, but I feel like it's got to be in the thousands of people who've engaged with that post from Dabe the Possession.
If you're new to the show, we watched a movie called Dabe the Possession, which was, from Turkey?
Beats me.
And Dabe the Possession, and it was a pretty good movie, pretty scary, and a found footage movie, and it had a ridiculous scene with a cursed toilet in which an exorcist basically goes and starts pulling items out of this toilet, and the family is
like rabbits out of a hat. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and the people just are more and more terrified the more random stuff he's pulling out of this toilet. And I mean, obviously this is something that has some sort of cultural significance to them, but not to us, and apparently to lots of people from the Arab world on Facebook, because I posted a clip from that movie on our Facebook to kind of show this scene and the extravagance, not necessarily even the absurdity. It's absurd, but it's just a sensational scene. Posted this on Facebook, and to this day we're getting comments from people who are like mad at us for posting this and saying that it's not something that people should see and that we are bad people who should be in jail for sharing it.
There are places in the world that we legitimately cannot go without trepidation.
We cannot
because of this. We could be jailed instantly.
Yes, locked up abroad for watching every horror movie on Netflix. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. Eerie. So, where does this mystery take us?
That's a good question. I feel like a lot does happen that's in the spoiler stall of this movie.
The next major event that happens in this movie is one of the other random girls from this school attempts suicide and is caught and saved by the guidance counselor. But then that even further ratchets up the, what the hell is going on in this school? What's going on with all these kids? The nuns, they're like, well, the answer is everyone's just going to go to bed and we're going to pray about it harder. Thoughts and prayers. We know that doesn't work. At some point, our hero disguises, because she's been she's been suspended from the school at this point. Yeah. She sneaks back into the school dressed up like a nun, like Mission Impossible 3, and sneaks into the head nun's office and goes to the desk and finds her files on Eri, and turns out that Eri was a student at the school in 1972 or something. So 25 years or so before the events of this movie. And I think the head nun was one of her classmates, right?
I don't think it was that far back. I think this all happened because there's something with the nun that I called back to before the break, where she says I feel like the nun was the guidance counselor at that
I love
time.
how we're like, come on down to the spoiler room. We're going to explain everything, and then we can explain nothing.
Hey, watch this movie and try and do it better than us, motherfuckers. I saw one of our fans on the Discord said that they had made it 26 minutes in and fell asleep, which would have been me if I was not on assignment.
All right. Well, here's what we know. We know that the head nun has a file in her desk on Eri. She knows what happened to Eri. And in fact, she has like a Polaroid of Eri's corpse.
She has a reel of photos, of 35 millimeter photos.
Oh, and the reel of photos like kind of tell some of this story.
Yeah.
And then I think the holes in that story are filled in by Eri the Ghost through an interview at some point.
Yes.
But basically what happened was Eri was just, picked on, cyberbullied, whatever the offline version of cyberbullying
that's just called bullying, Chris.
Okay. Bullying. She was bullied for what reason? Oh. What reason was she bullied?
So she couldn't make friends. Like nobody liked her. Yeah, it was just like a bullying montage. We see her eat a butterfly at one point, which I thought was pretty. She's a little weird. Disturbing. She's a little weird.
There's some like abuse going on at home. I think she has an unstable sort of household. So
yes, her father's hinted. It's hinted that her father's an alcoholic. Her mother at one point is like drunk or on drugs and like chops her hair up. And she goes to school in a veil. I think because she gets punished by the nun because she has been set up to quote unquote touch another girl's breast while she's in the bathroom stall, and the nun the girls tell the nun about it, and the nun comes in and admonishes her. That's the way I read that anyway.
I think you're right. Yes.
And then the next, that night, her mom chops her hair up. Her dad gets drunk. She goes back to school looking like hell, and the nun kicks her out just for wearing the veil and looking inappropriate.
And like we see, like we've seen Ghost Eri. Like there's a scene where our school guidance counselor comes up on Ghost Eri from behind and touches her hair, and the hair comes off in her hand, and then she turns around and looks awful. I mean, I thought it was a different ghost. I thought it was a boy but it's not a boy. It's Eri just with her hair cut very short.
I thought the whole time the hair thing was just like to make her look spookier because she's a ghost, but it turns out that no, that was actually trauma inflicted on her by her parents.
Right. So.
Which makes her more of an outcast at school, naturally.
And she does kill herself, though, right?
I think you're correct. I think she does kill herself.
I'm pretty sure it seems like a really weird thing to be unclear about.
I know.
But I think they finally show her killing herself. But before that, there is a lot of like, we're kind of expecting there to be a twist, like to the circumstances that she died in. Because we're told literally in the first 30 seconds of the movie that girl killed herself. So we don't really believe it. And then we do see some visions / dreams / flashbacks where there's like a nun holding the rope. But I think that's just a dream.
That is, I think, kind of visual shorthand for the scenario writ large of what happened to that girl. That, like, because we see the current nun in this vision, the school guidance counselor sees her hoisting the girl up over the bathroom stall with the rope, but it's definitely a dream, and it's definitely like this is the situation in a microcosm. That like the nun is indirectly responsible for the suicide.
Yes. You know what I like? Right? Speaking of nuns, I like that shot where our hero is up above the courtyard of the school, and she sees the nun down on the lower level, and the nun starts running like up towards her.
I don't remember.
Okay, but it's very and our friends James Wan and Lee Winnell have used this to great effect.
I've never seen The Nun, but I got like lots of James Wan vibes throughout this film for sure.
Oh yeah, this is definitely a post Insidious, post Conjuring movie. They're definitely inspired by that in some places. But yeah, a nun, the silhouette of a nun running, very spooky for some reason. I guess it's because we're like, I know that shape and it's not supposed to move like that.
Yeah, that kind of stuff does work for me when it's done well, I have to say. Even though I think it's been overdone at this point.
Yeah, so Eri, I guess, killed herself eventually. And since then, she, just like we were told, just like the legend said, has been haunting this stall in the bathroom. And she's very sad. She's got a lot of pain, whatever. So we find, is this in this is before the confessional, right? We find all this out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then we find out that Eri haunts the place for a while, then discovers she has a superpower as a ghost,
Yes.
which is basically to, like, I wouldn't say possess, but to corrupt other people.
She can manipulate other people to her will to accomplish. Like, if she wants a friend in the afterlife, she can have someone go nuts and kill she can have people killed. She can get people to commit suicide.
Yes.
I think one of the girls that commit suicide, like, she thought they would be friends, but it didn't work out in the afterlife.
Right.
She's bitter about that.
Because believe it or not, like, people, they die and they're actually kind of pissed off when they realize they were murdered by this creepy ghost girl.
That, right?
And they don't want to be her friend because so that's kind of Eri's predicament. Not only was she an outcast in the living world, but even the dead don't want to fuck with her because she's such a creep.
And that's on that list of things that I found really kind of fresh in this movie. That's something I don't think I've ever seen in a film or read in a short story or a novel before. I thought that was pretty cool.
And she's lonely and she's mad and she feels like her whole life and afterlife have been unfair. And the school psychologist really sympathizes with her and wants to help her. And I thought that was really cute. So the climax, Eri has made her dad kill her mom, stuff like that. And then
made him, how did he die? She made him
he died somehow. Or he something weird happened. But what the groundskeeper that we were talking about actually did kill that girl, but it's not his fault.
Right.
He was under the influence of Eri, but I liked how when the psychologist figures this out, she's like, well, there's nothing we can do for him because he killed her. It's like, I know I can't get him off the hook for this because no one's going to believe the devil made him do it. The Conjuring, the devil made me do it.
Again, that's on that list. I liked that too. That it's just like, well, we understand what happened here. It sucks, but it's a lost cause. Like we live in a society where it's apparently pretty easy to get people killed for committing crimes.
Yes. But the climax is the guidance counselor takes Eri into the confessional in the chapel in the boarding school, which the reason they go into the confessional I thought was really interesting and neat. It's like Eri doesn't want to be looked at too much or something, and she's like, we're gonna go in here and you won't be able to see me and I won't be able to see you, and we're just gonna talk for a while, okay, Eri? Like really meeting this student on her level.
Right, she's a
really
great guidance counselor.
She's great at her job. And so they go into the confessional, and this is when it starts getting scary because we still kind of see Eri through the fucking holes of the confessional, but she is demonic. She is not. She's like more demonic than she's been at any point in this movie. And basically, Eri's evil and basically beyond repair, beyond salvation. We can't fix her. And she's like, I'm so lonely. Will you want to be my friend? Will you stay with me forever? Will you come with me to hell? Which is one of the scariest parts of the movie for me. And the guidance counselor is like, I was with you until that last part, Eri. And Eri's like, see, you're just like everybody else. Now I'm going to make the cop, whose name was Julian Castro, which is kind of funny for our politicos out there. It makes the cop go crazy. And he starts, we haven't even talked about this cop because he doesn't matter, but he was a good guy.
He's just a pawn from the beginning.
But he's a pawn. So he basically goes nuts and tries to kill the guidance counselor. But this is what I mean by he's not possessed by Eri. Like Eri's still doing her own thing. And this guy doesn't have Eri's intellect when he's possessed. He's just basically a zombie.
Yeah, she just makes him evil and murderous.
Yeah, makes him evil.
She's not acting through him, she's directing him.
They end up on the roof. The cop ends up choking our hero. Our hero can't get free because she doesn't listen to Amon, and she doesn't know that you got to break grips from the inside instead of pulling on the outside of the arm when you're getting strangled. So, but she does break free. What happened? Oh, the ghost, the other ghost girl, the girl who killed herself? No. The ghost of the girl who got thrown to her death? Right?
This is where I had trouble picking up the pieces.
A second ghost girl shows up, and it's the girl that didn't want to be Eri's friend. So I think there's only one girl who actually gets killed by Eri, and it's the one that they thought the groundskeeper killed, right?
That is true, but I was confused about that for much of the runtime because there were a couple of different names. There was an Anna, there was a Clara, and then there's Eri. And one of them tried to commit suicide, but did not end up killing herself. She didn't succeed.
Right, that's the most recent victim. So I think what we see here in the end is the ghost of the girl who got killed by the groundskeeper shows up and is like, "Get away from her, you bitch," to Eri, and slaps her, and they go over the edge of the school. And I guess maybe if you get thrown off a ledge by a ghost in the ghost realm, it kills you.
I mean, the logic doesn't really work for me, but that seems to be what happened.
Because I don't think we see Eri again.
No, then we... Wait.
So that kind of...
Wait, but somebody... It's not a ghost that gets thrown off. Somebody dies then because... Oh, I remember. Okay. The counselor dies.
Yeah, okay. So
that's why there's a memorial afterward.
That's the twist, because we go from this where basically this ghost girl shows up and throws Eri off the building and sacrifices herself to do it. And presumably the day's saved. I don't know what happens to the cop.
We think the counselor got away from the cop, but it turns out
dies, doesn't he?
God, it's like I'm ashamed to say again. I don't recall.
Dude, I was a little bit tired, but like I was actually actively watching this. I just can't.
I was wired and actively watching it. Like I was glued to it, but I just got tripped up by so many things. Part of it is that all these girls look alike, and or enough alike that like I was really kind of honing in on that and trying to figure out who's dead, who's not, because with the color drained out of everyone's face, like I mentioned before the break, it's kind of hard to tell who's a ghost and who's not sometimes in this movie, which works to both its strengths and weaknesses depending on what scene we're talking about.
Yeah. I don't know what happens to the cop. I don't know. If you really care about what happens to the cop, you'll have to watch the movie.
Yeah, I don't care about what happens to the cop.
He kind of disappeared, just like the real life Julian Castro disappeared after he called Biden senile at that debate, and then he was never heard from again. Anyway.
Well, so the counselor, like, we think she survives this whole ordeal. She's going to move on with her life. She's packing up her office.
Yeah.
But her picture, or a picture, is removed from her office.
They put a picture away.
So that's a little odd, but we do find out that she is in fact in the afterlife, and she befriends.
Yeah, it's a Sixth Sense moment. You know, it's like she's like, "Oh, hey, this is cute. Whose funeral? Oh, I don't like that at all. It's my funeral." And then the last girl in the pew is like there sobbing. I think it's the would-be suicide victim, right?
Yes, who tries to commit suicide again, but the counselor saves her, and that is the counselor's redemption. That's the only way that she can actually make an impact in this school, is to actually take over as the ghost of the school and save these girls instead of tormenting them.
Yes.
And it's
cute.
Beautiful. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause they go up on the roof and this girl's like gonna jump off the roof, and she's like, "Oh," and she like says out into the heavens, she's like, "Oh, Mrs. So-and-so, if you can help me, please help me."
and she does.
And she catches her and she's hugging her. And does the girl know that she's there or not? It doesn't really matter. Now in death, this counselor has finally found the gifts to actually make a difference and be a positive force on these kids, and it's a beautiful it's cheesy as fuck. It's
very
corny.
Flanagan.
It's very Flanagan. The butterfly eating is very Flanagan too.
No, Flanagan wouldn't let you eat the butterfly in his movie. He wouldn't go that far.
But yeah, that's the movie. That's the end of the movie, and it makes you feel good. Made me feel good.
It made me feel, yeah. It's kind of a mixed blessing because it's a bad miracle, because it is like truly unfortunate that like this setting and the society is such that like the only way that this very talented, I mean, cannot say enough, like guidance counselors in movies, I mean, she is up there at the very top for me. And it's unfortunate that the only way that she can effectively do her job is to be murdered by a ghost. Mm-hmm. but hey, it's like, it was comforting to me knowing that going forward, she's there for these girls who are going to continue to struggle because of the oppressive and violent and religiously backwards nature of the school and their teachings. So I felt like we probably won't be seeing any more suicides in this school for a while, and that's a good thing.
What the hell are we watching next week? I think it is your turn to pick because Patrick must be present to win.
We are going to watch Uma.
Oh, really?
Remember Uma? I don't really.
Yeah, we had a theatrical release that some people took advantage of, like right out of the pandemic.
Yeah. This stars. I don't have any interest in this movie whatsoever, but I just find it interesting that it's on Netflix all of a sudden, kind of unceremoniously. This stars Sandra Oh and Dermot Mulroney. To set your expectations appropriately, this sits at a 51% on Metacritic, 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. A woman's quiet life on an American farm takes a terrifying turn when the remains of her estranged mother arrive from Korea. So we're going to see what that's all about.
Uma mean mother?
I do not know, and I do not even know that it's pronounced Uma. It could be Uma.
Uma, Uma, Roma ma, ga, ga, ooh la la.
Thank you for that, Chris. Well, yeah, come check us out in 2 weeks for Uma.
All right, well, until then, for every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
And I'm Steven, and there's no Patrick. Bye.
Bye.